problem with climate change is we don't really know what it's going to do. So we know that the world is on average getting warmer, and it's going to get warmer by a relatively small amount. We're talking about a small number of degrees. So that in itself is not going to be particularly damaging to plants. The problem is the knock-on effect that will have on the overall climate. So it won't be that the whole world gets warmer in a uniform way. It will be that there's variation across the world in weather patterns, and we'll get more extreme weather events. We'll get more greater instances of drought. We'll get more heat waves. Potentially we could even get more cold weather in winter. It's going to be very unpredictable. And plants have evolved over millions of years to know when to grow, when to flower. So they start growing in the spring when it starts to get warm, and they have a life cycle that will allow them to finish growing by the winter of the next year. Now, if the cues they're getting from the weather start changing, that's going to confuse them. They're going to start growing at the wrong time. So they might start growing earlier in the winter, but then the weather may go cold again, and that can be very damaging. It may be that they're going to grow through the spring and then get hit by a heat wave or by drought at the beginning of the summer, which they would have not evolved to deal with. We, broadly speaking, are interested in understanding how plants cope when they're exposed to extreme weather conditions. So this might be heat, it might be drought. In fact, one thing paradoxically that we've been looking at a lot recently is how plants cope with growing in the winter. Now, it doesn't really make sense when you think about global warming. You don't think global warming, that means we've got to make plants, breed plants that grow better in the cold. But actually we believe that switching plant growth into winter more could make farming more secure. So at the moment, the way that, say, wheat is grown, which is the number one crop in the world, or one of the top two crops in the world, you plant the wheat in the autumn mostly, so about September, early October. It then will start growing, and then it sits in the field. As the weather gets cold, it will sit in the field until March, and then in March it will start growing again and flower in July. Now, as climates change, the incidence of droughts and heat waves in summer will increase. So that part of the year, when the plants are at the moment setting seed, becomes a vulnerable time. So what you would like is to have a wheat plant which produces its yield earlier in the year. So if you could have a wheat that's ready to harvest in May, then it wouldn't be growing in that most risky time of the year. To do that, you would want to get plants growing more in winter. So paradoxically, we're interested in improving food security in the face of climate change, by getting plants to grow more at low temperature. There's a lot of work going on around the world trying to understand how we can improve the way that crops grow in order to get better yields. So this is not only important in terms of climate change, but also generally there's going to be growing demand for food. So we predict by the middle of the century we're going to need a 50% increase in food productivity or food production around the world to meet the needs of the growing population. And photosynthesis, which is the area of plant biology that I'm most interested in, is one of the key processes that we think is important. So photosynthesis is the reaction whereby plants can take sunlight, carbon dioxide, and make sugars. So that's where they're getting their resources, where they're getting their food from. But photosynthesis is not a very efficient process at the moment. There are some design flaws in it. Now, a few plants have got around this problem, in particular things like sweet corn, maize, sugarcane, and sorghum will be the ones that we mainly eat. And they have a form of photosynthesis which is called C4 photosynthesis. So they use, basically they're using a pump. So they have a biochemical pump which sucks carbon dioxide in from the atmosphere and concentrates it inside their cell, so that the reactions of photosynthesis can go better. Now, this is particularly an advantage in tropical places, so in hot temperatures. This is a real benefit. It allows plants to do better photosynthesis. But most of the crops we grow, for example, wheat and rice, the number one and two yielding cereal crops in the world, they're not capable of doing this. So there's been an international effort which is attempting to take traits from plants like maize, from sweet corn, and put them into rice. So the idea is that we're going to produce a super rice which is able to grow more efficiently, get greater yields, and also cope better with extreme environments, so cope better particularly with hot conditions. Provided we continue to invest in that area of research, then we have a realistic chance of improving crop productivity in a way that will make our food more secure in the light of climate change.